I still remember the sound first, not her voice, not the shouting, but the sharp sting on my scalp when her fingers tangled into my hair and yanked hard enough to snap my head back. Chairs scraped a glass, shattered somewhere behind me, and suddenly everyone in that restaurant was staring while my aunt dragged me toward the door, calling me trash, calling me a beggar, like she wanted the word to stick to my skin forever. I was 17, skinny, wearing a dress that wasn't mine, and in that moment I honestly thought, yeah, this is how my life ends, with me apologizing again, with her hurting me again, with everyone watching and doing nothing. Then a man I had never seen before stepped in front of the exit and said quietly, almost bored, "Let her go, now." That was the second everything changed. Before that night, my life was small, tight, and carefully controlled. I lived in my Aunt Marlene's house, but I wasn't family, not really. I slept in a storage room off the garage on a thin mattress that smelled like oil and dust. I woke up before everyone else to clean, and I went to school only when she decided I'd earned it. People like to imagine abuse as loud and obvious, but most of it is routine. It's learning how to move through a room without being noticed, how to swallow your words, how to smile when someone is tearing you down, because smiling keeps things from getting worse. By the time I was 17, I'd gotten good at it. Too good. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration, my high school graduation, though the way my aunt announced it that morning made it sound more like an obligation she wanted credit for. She picked the restaurant, one of those upscale places downtown where the lights are soft and the menus feel heavy in your hands. I remember staring at the prices and feeling my stomach drop, knowing I didn't belong there, knowing somehow this would be used against me later. Across the table, my cousin Talia scrolled on her phone, bored, perfectly dressed like this was just another night out. My aunt made a show of telling me to order whatever I wanted, loud enough for other tables to hear, smiling, like she was generous, like she was kind. I ordered water and the cheapest pasta because that's what survival teaches you to do. Take up as little space as possible. Her smile tightened immediately. "Speak up," she snapped. "No one can hear you when you mumble like that. Honestly, it's embarrassing." And that set the tone. Every bite came with commentary. How I held my fork, how I sat, how I drank. My cousin laughed, added her own comments, filmed little clips like my humiliation was content. I kept my eyes on my plate and reminded myself it would be over soon. It always ended eventually. What I didn't know was that a man a few tables away hadn't touched his food since we sat down. He watched everything not casually, but like he was memorizing it, like he was holding himself back from stepping in too early. He wore a simple, dark suit, nothing flashy, but there was something about the way people moved around him, like the space itself respected him. At the time, he was just a stranger. Later, I'd understand he was the reason the night didn't end the way all the others had. When the check came, my aunt didn't even look at it. She slid it across the table toward me and said, sweet as sugar, that she'd forgotten her wallet in the car. Said I'd invited them out. Said it was only fair I paid. The number on that receipt felt unreal, like a joke. I had $20 in my pocket. One bill. I tried to explain, my voice shaking, and that's when her hand slammed down on the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. Her voice rose sharp and angry, accusing me of trying to scam her, of embarrassing her in public. People were openly staring now. The waiter hovered, unsure what to do. My cousin started recording her phone, pointed right at my face. I pulled out the 20 and put it on the table. That was all I had. For a split second, the room went quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. Then my aunt stood up, grabbed my hair, and yanked me out of my chair. Pain exploded across my scalp. My hip hit the table. I cried out, instinctively apologizing, because that's what I'd been trained to do. She dragged me across the floor, shouting that I thought I mattered, that I was nothing but a leech. Phones came out everywhere. Someone tried to step in and got shoved aside. I begged. I always begged. It never helped. We were just a few steps from the door when she stopped short. I looked up through tears and saw a man standing there blocking her path like a wall. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch her. He just looked at her hand twisted in my hair and said, "You have 5 seconds to let her go." There was something in his tone that made the room go cold. My aunt scoffed, at first told him to mind his business, said this was family. He counted down calmly like he had all the time in the world. When he said, "Before you learn what happens when you hurt my daughter," her grip loosened instantly. The word daughter hit me harder than the pain. I was still on the floor, holding my head, trying to understand what was happening. My aunt laughed nervous, now said he was confused, said I didn't have a father, said the man who got my mother pregnant disappeared before I was born. She said it like it was a fact she'd repeated so many times she believed it herself. The stranger didn't argue. He just told her my name, my full name, and said she was lying. He said he knew everything. About the money she'd taken that was meant for me, about the room I slept in, about the way I was treated when no one was watching. He showed her his phone videos and photos and dates and times, proof stacked on proof. He told the manager to call the police and charge the meal to his account. And just like that, the story my aunt had controlled for my entire life collapsed in front of dozens of witnesses. The police arrived quickly. The footage spoke for itself. Watching her get handcuffed felt unreal, like watching a movie about someone else's life. She screamed that I'd planned it, that I'd set her up, her eyes full of rage. I couldn't even process the accusation. I'd never planned anything in my life. I'd barely survived it. When they led her away, the restaurant slowly came back to life, but I couldn't move. I was shaking too hard. The man knelt in front of me and asked gently if he could help me up. He told me his name was Daniel. He told me he was my father. I didn't know how to feel. Fear, hope, anger, disbelief, all tangled together. At the hospital, doctors documented injuries I'd learned to ignore. Old scars, poor nutrition, things I thought were normal because they'd always been there. A social worker asked questions that made my life sound worse out loud than it had ever felt in my head. When she asked if I wanted to go back to my aunt's house, I whispered, no, terrified, saying it would make things worse. She told me I wasn't going back, not ever. That night, for the first time, I cried without trying to be quiet. The custody hearing the next morning was fast and brutal. DNA results confirmed what Daniel said. Bank records showed money stolen in my name. School records showed how often I'd been kept home. Security footage from the restaurant played on a screen. My aunt said she'd done her best, that she'd sacrificed for me, that I owed her everything. The judge asked her what exactly she thought she'd given me. When he granted custody to my father and referred her case for criminal charges, something inside me shifted. Not happiness, not yet, but space. Like I could finally breathe. Going to my father's house felt like stepping into someone else's life. It was big, quiet, overwhelming. I asked where I should sleep, how to stay out of the way. He looked at me like the question hurt him. He showed me a bedroom, my bedroom, a space that was mine. I didn't know what to do with that kind of freedom. Healing wasn't quick. Therapy taught me that flinching, apologizing, constantly hoarding food weren't flaws, they were survival. My father was patient in a way I wasn't used to. He reminded me I didn't need permission to exist. Slowly, painfully slowly, I started to believe him. When the criminal trial came months later, I chose to speak. I told the court what had been done to me. I told my aunt I forgave her not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry her with me anymore. That was my victory. Now, my life looks nothing like it did. I'm in college, I have friends. I laugh easily. I started a small foundation to help kids who grew up like I did, not because suffering is noble, but because survival should mean something. Sometimes I think about that night and how close I came to believing it was just another ending. Instead, it was a beginning. Not because fate stepped in, but because someone chose to stop walking past cruelty and say, that's enough. So here's my question for you. Where do you draw the line between family loyalty and accountability? When does "that's just how they are" stop being an excuse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story hit you, if you've ever felt invisible or worthless because of how someone treated you, like the video, share it, subscribe. Stories like this matter. They remind us that even the worst moments can be turned around not by magic, but by courage. And if you take nothing else from this, remember this: you are not a burden. You are not nothing, and your story is not over yet.